Hey there, I'm Brandon. This is Dirt Church Devotional. How many times have you heard somebody say, don't judge me, or only God can judge me? And maybe you haven't only heard that, maybe you've actually said it. You've said, don't judge me. And we don't want to judge, but let's be honest. It's more about we don't want to be judged, because we're actually really good about judging other people. And we're actually really good about judging ourselves and condemning ourselves. And problem is, we're not so good about seeing ourselves through God's eyes. Okay? Now, I want to throw a name out at you and ask you what you think. The name is Lot. Now, my guess is you're thinking of all the bad things that Lot did. You're thinking of all the crazy things that happened to Lot, all the gross things that happened to him. And you probably judge him as not such a great guy. But can I tell you, I think God had a different view. In fact, I know God had a different view. But let's go back in case you don't know Lot. Let's go back. Lot was a nephew of Abraham. In Genesis chapter 13, he has gone with Abraham and left their homeland and traveling through the promised land. And they are both extremely wealthy because God has blessed them both. And Abraham says, hey, you know what? You pick where you want to go. He picked the well-watered plains where Sodom and Gomorrah and a bunch of other cities were because they were watered good. And we think, oh, not such a good choice. But we read the rest of the story and we make that judgment. But then he moves closer and closer, and eventually he moves into Sodom, and hey, not such a good idea. This is a bad idea. He shouldn't have been there, and we judge him on that. And then God sends angels to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah and rescue Lot and his wife and his daughters. And they show kindness and let them go to a small town rather than to the mountains. But you know what? They're told, don't look back. Lot's wife looks back. She turns into a pillar of salt. There's all these problems. Lot and his daughters get into this little town, and then they get scared. And so they move up into the mountains. And in the mountains, this is where things get even worse. They're living in a cave. That's what I say. It's not just the choices that we make, but the things that happen to us. Lot's daughters hatch a plan to get their father drunk and to sleep with him and hopefully get pregnant and have kids by him. And their plan worked. They both ended up getting pregnant by their father. And the oldest one had a son and named him Moab. And the youngest one had a son and named him Ben-Ammi. And we're told that Moab became the father of the Moabites. And Ben-Ammi became the father of the Ammonites. And those names are kind of infamous for being enemies of Israel. It's all pretty bad. It's all pretty bad. But I want you to think a little bit, and maybe you never thought about this, but there's a young lady by the name of Ruth. She was a Moabite, and she submitted herself to God, surrendered to the God of Israel, and really became an Israelite in name and in duty. And you know what? She ended up being the ancestral great-great-grandmother of Jesus, bloodline grandmother of Jesus. And then of the Ammonites, King Solomon, which was David's son. He married an Ammonite princess, and they had a boy by the name of Rehoboam who became king. And by the way, he too was in the bloodline lineage of Jesus. So while we're busy looking at all the bad and all the mistakes and whatnot, God is busy working in the background and moving and helping and healing. Taking that which the enemy means for evil and turning it for good. You know, the very last thing that's written about Lot is found in 2 Peter chapter 2. You can go to it, find it. 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 7 and 8. And I'll paraphrase. It basically says, that righteous man was tortured in his righteous heart by all the unrighteous actions that he saw all around him day by day, in reference to Sodom. So while we're sitting here going, boy, he's making some bad decisions, and he did. God called him a righteous man, not self-righteous, but righteous. He must have submitted himself to God and his plans. Can I tell you, no matter what you've done, no matter what's been done to you, you can be considered righteous. The last thing written about you can be that you were a righteous man or woman, submitted to Jesus Christ. Why don't you chew on that? We'll talk to you next time.